From denied candy to empire. The automatic doors of the Michigan bank whooshed open as 7-year-old Alina Morse skipped through them, her tiny hand clutched tightly in her father's larger one. The marble floors echoed with the sound of her light-up sneakers, and her eyes sparkled with the innocent wonder that only children possess when everything in the world still seems magical and full of possibility. Behind the teller's window, a kind woman with silver hair and a warm smile noticed the little girl with bouncing curls and bright eyes. Like thousands of bank tellers before her, she reached into the bowl of colorful lollipops that sat on her counter, a small gesture of sweetness in the serious world of financial transactions. "Would you like a lollipop, sweetheart?" the teller asked, holding out a rainbow-swirled sucker that caught the overhead lights and threw tiny prisms across the ceiling. Alina's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Her small hand reached eagerly toward the offered treat, already imagining the burst of sugary sweetness that would dance across her tongue. But before her fingers could close around the plastic stick, she heard her father's gentle but firm voice. "Alina, honey, you know candy isn't good for your teeth." The disappointment hit her like a tiny thunderclap. Her hand dropped to her side, and she watched wistfully as her father completed his banking business. But as they walked back to their car through the Michigan afternoon, something extraordinary was happening in Alina's 7-year-old mind, something that would eventually transform the candy industry and make her the youngest entrepreneur to ever grace the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. Instead of throwing a tantrum or begging for the lollipop like most children would have done, Alina asked a question that would change everything. "Daddy, why does candy have to be bad for your teeth? Why can't someone make candy that's actually good for them?" Tom Morse looked down at his daughter, struck by the earnestness in her voice. Most adults would have dismissed such a question with a pat answer about sugar and cavities. But Tom had learned to pay attention when Alina asked questions. This was the same little girl who had announced at age 3 that she wanted to be a CEO when she grew up, the same child who had been keeping an idea binder filled with business inventions since she was 4 years old. "That's a really good question, sweetheart," he said, opening the car door for her. "What do you think?" As they drove home through the tree-lined streets of Wolverine Lake, Michigan, Alina pressed her small face against the window and pondered the mystery that had captured her imagination. Why did something that brought so much joy have to cause so much harm? Surely, in a world where people could send rockets to space and create computers that fit in your pocket, someone could figure out how to make candy that didn't hurt your teeth. That evening at dinner, Alina couldn't stop talking about her idea. While her parents listened with the patient amusement that comes with raising a precocious child, Alina outlined her vision with the kind of passionate certainty that adults lose somewhere along the way to growing up. "I'm going to invent a lollipop that cleans your teeth while you eat it," she announced, waving her fork for emphasis. "Kids will love it because it tastes good, and parents will love it because it's healthy. It's perfect." Her mother, Suzanne, exchanged a knowing glance with her husband. Their daughter had been talking about becoming a CEO since she could barely pronounce the words, and her idea binder was filled with inventions that ranged from the adorably impractical to the surprisingly sophisticated. A few months earlier, she had designed a peanut butter and jelly tube that would make sandwich making easier for kids, an idea that had impressed even the adults who had seen it. But this candy idea felt different. There was something in Alina's voice, an intensity and focus that suggested this wasn't just another childhood fantasy that would be forgotten by bedtime. "How would you make a lollipop that cleans teeth, honey?" Tom asked, genuinely curious about his daughter's thought process. Alina's brow furrowed with the concentration of someone tackling a complex problem. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I'm going to find out. There has to be a way." And with that declaration, 7-year-old Alina Morse began a journey that would test her determination, challenge every assumption about age and capability, and ultimately create a multi-million-dollar empire that would revolutionize how America thinks about candy. The research phase began the very next day. While other 7-year-olds were watching cartoons or playing with dolls, Alina was conducting what could only be described as a full-scale investigation into the relationship between sugar, teeth, and candy manufacturing. Armed with her mother's laptop and an insatiable curiosity, she dove into the world of dental health with the intensity of a graduate student working on her thesis. What Alina discovered in her research both fascinated and frustrated her. Sugar, she learned, fed the bacteria in people's mouths, creating acids that attacked tooth enamel and caused cavities. The more sugar someone ate, the more damage occurred. But as she dug deeper into her investigation, she stumbled upon something that made her heart race with excitement. There were natural sweeteners that didn't feed harmful bacteria. In fact, some of them actually helped fight the bacteria that caused tooth decay. Xylitol, she read on countless websites, was a natural sugar substitute that not only didn't harm teeth, but actually helped clean them. It was derived from birch trees and corn, tasted sweet, and had been used in sugar-free gum for years, specifically because of its dental benefits. "Mom! Dad! I found it!" Alina shrieked one evening, running down the stairs with the laptop clutched in her small hands. "There's this thing called xylitol, and it makes your teeth cleaner instead of dirtier." Her parents gathered around as their 7-year-old daughter explained the scientific properties of xylitol with the enthusiasm most children reserved for describing their favorite cartoon characters. She had diagrams she'd printed from dental websites, nutritional information she'd copied from research papers, and a growing list of questions about how to turn this knowledge into actual candy. But knowing about xylitol was only the beginning. Alina still had to figure out how to create a lollipop that tasted good, looked appealing, and actually delivered the dental benefits she was promising. And she had to do it all while being 7 years old in a world designed for adults. The experimentation phase turned the Morse family kitchen into something resembling a mad scientist's laboratory crossed with a candy factory. Alina convinced her parents to buy xylitol, food coloring, flavoring extracts, and every type of candy mold they could find online. What followed were months of trial and error that would have discouraged most adults, but only seemed to fuel Alina's determination. The first attempts were disasters of epic proportions. The candy mixture wouldn't hold together properly. The flavors were too weak or overwhelmingly strong. The colors bled together into muddy browns and grays that looked nothing like the rainbow brilliance Alina envisioned. Some batches were so hard they could have chipped teeth instead of cleaning them. Others were so soft they melted into sticky messes before anyone could eat them. "Honey, maybe we should take a break," Suzanne suggested, one particularly frustrating evening, as Alina stared at a batch of lollipops that had somehow turned purple instead of the bright red she'd been attempting. But Alina shook her head with the stubborn determination that had gotten her this far. Thomas Edison tried over 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb, she said, repeating something she'd read in one of the entrepreneurship books she'd been devouring. I can try 1,000 times too, if that's what it takes. The breakthrough came on attempt number 67, not because Alina was counting, but because she had started keeping detailed notes of each experiment, documenting what worked, what didn't, and what might work better next time. This particular evening she had adjusted the ratio of xylitol to other ingredients, used a different mixing technique she'd seen in a YouTube video about candy making, and added the flavoring at a different point in the process. When she pulled the cooled lollipops from their molds, they were perfect, crystal clear with vibrant colors that caught the kitchen light like stained glass. The texture was exactly right, hard enough to last, but not so hard that they hurt to eat. And the taste was magical. "Dad, Mom, try this," Alina called, running into the living room with her latest creation. Tom took a tentative lick, prepared for another well-intentioned failure. Instead, his eyes widened with surprise. The lollipop was delicious, sweet and fruity with a clean finish that left his mouth feeling fresh instead of sticky. "Alina," he said slowly, "this actually tastes really good." "And it's cleaning your teeth while you eat it," she added proudly, "just like I said it would." But having a perfect recipe was only the first hurdle in Alina's entrepreneurial journey. Creating a few lollipops in her kitchen was completely different from manufacturing thousands of them for commercial sale. She needed equipment she didn't have, ingredients in quantities her parents couldn't afford, and manufacturing expertise that no 7-year-old possessed. Most children would have been satisfied with successfully creating a few perfect lollipops for themselves and their family. But Alina had never thought small. From the moment she'd asked why candy had to be bad for teeth, she'd envisioned her creation helping children all over the world enjoy treats without the guilt and health consequences that traditional candy created. "I want to sell these to everyone," she announced at dinner one evening. "Kids everywhere should be able to have candy that makes their teeth healthier." "That's a wonderful dream, sweetheart," Suzanne said gently. "But turning homemade candy into a real business is very complicated and expensive." Alina had been anticipating this conversation. Over the past months, while perfecting her recipe, she had also been researching what it would take to start a real candy company. She knew about manufacturing, distribution, marketing, and all the other big words that describe the complicated process of turning an idea into a business. "I've been saving my allowance," she said seriously, "and my birthday money and Christmas money. I have $3,750. Her parents stared at her in amazement. They had known Alina was a saver. She had always been careful with money, preferring to keep her allowance in a piggy bank rather than spend it on toys or treats. But they hadn't realized she had accumulated such a substantial sum. "That's a lot of money for a 7-year-old, Tom said. "But starting a candy company costs much more than that." "I know," Alina replied, pulling out a notebook filled with research she'd been conducting. "I've been looking up candy manufacturers online. There's a place in Michigan that makes lollipops for other companies. They said they could make my recipe if I order at least 10,000 pieces." She flipped through pages of notes written in her careful second-grade handwriting, mixed with printed emails and phone numbers she'd collected during her research. "The minimum order costs $7,000, she continued, "so I need you to invest $3,250 to match my savings. Then we'll be partners." Tom and Suzanne looked at each other across the dinner table, seeing their daughter in a completely new light. This wasn't just a childhood phase or a cute hobby. Alina had done real research, created a genuine innovation, and developed a business plan that, while simple, demonstrated understanding of concepts that most adults struggled with. "Alina," Tom said slowly, "do you understand that starting a business is risky? We might lose all the money we invest. The candy might not sell. People might not want to buy lollipops from a 7-year-old. Alina nodded solemnly. "I understand about risk," she said, "but I also understand about opportunity. This is my opportunity to help kids have healthier candy. If I don't try, someone else might invent it first, and then kids will have to wait longer to have candy that's good for their teeth." The logic was simple but powerful. Tom found himself thinking about his daughter's determination over the following days. Alina had demonstrated persistence, creativity, and business thinking that impressed everyone who heard about her project. She had identified a real problem, developed an innovative solution, and created a plan to bring it to market. More importantly, she had shown the kind of passionate commitment to her vision that successful entrepreneurs possessed, the willingness to work harder and longer than anyone expected, to persist through failures and setbacks, to believe in possibilities that other people couldn't see. A week later, Tom sat down with his daughter to discuss the partnership she had proposed. "Alina," he said, "I've decided to match your investment, but this means we're going into business together for real. You'll be the CEO, but you'll need to work harder than you've ever worked before. Are you ready for that?" Alina's response was to throw her arms around her father's neck and promise him that she would work harder than any CEO in history. The manufacturing phase introduced Alina to challenges she had never anticipated. Working with a commercial candy manufacturer meant dealing with food safety regulations, quality control standards, and production schedules that operated on adult timelines rather than 7-year-old enthusiasm. The manufacturer, a family-owned company that had been making candy for 3 decades, was initially skeptical about working with such a young entrepreneur. But when Alina arrived for their first meeting with her research binder, her perfected recipe, and her detailed business plan, their skepticism began to transform into admiration. "I've worked with a lot of startup candy companies," the production manager told Tom after spending an hour with Alina. "Most adults don't come in as prepared as your daughter. She knows exactly what she wants, why she wants it, and how she thinks it should be made." The first commercial batch of what Alina had decided to call Zollipops, a combination of her name and lollipops, rolled off the production line on a crisp October morning. Alina watched through the factory window as machines mixed, heated, molded, and wrapped 10,000 copies of her invention. "They're beautiful," she whispered, pressing her face against the glass as rainbow-colored lollipops moved down the conveyor belt like tiny jewels. But manufacturing the lollipops was only half the challenge. Alina still had to find customers who would buy them, stores that would sell them, and ways to tell people about the amazing candy that cleaned teeth while delivering delicious sweetness. The first sales breakthrough came through a connection that most adult entrepreneurs never would have considered: Alina's dentist. Dr. Miller had been fascinated by her project from the beginning, offering advice about xylitol's dental benefits and even testing early prototypes to confirm that they delivered the promised tooth cleaning effects. "Alina," Dr. Miller said during one of her regular checkups. "I think you should try to get Zollipops into Whole Foods. They specialize in healthy products, and your lollipops would be perfect for their customers." The suggestion terrified and thrilled Alina in equal measure. Whole Foods was a major grocery chain with hundreds of stores across the country. Getting her product on their shelves would mean reaching thousands of customers she could never meet individually. But it also meant convincing adult business executives to take a chance on a product created by someone who still lost teeth and left them for the tooth fairy. Alina's approach to getting into Whole Foods was characteristic of everything else about her entrepreneurial journey. Thorough research combined with fearless persistence. She spent weeks learning about Whole Foods' product selection process, their focus on natural and organic foods, and their customer demographics. Then she created a presentation that would have impressed executives from companies with decades of experience. She had samples of Zollipops in multiple flavors, dental research documenting xylitol's benefits, customer feedback from the first people who had tried her candy, and financial projections showing how Zollipops could become a successful product line. The meeting with Whole Foods buyers was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. Alina wore her best dress and carried her presentation materials in a briefcase she had borrowed from her father. At 8 years old, she was probably the youngest person to ever pitch a product to Whole Foods executives. "Tell us about Zollipops," the buyer said after reviewing Alina's materials. What followed was a presentation that combined the passionate enthusiasm of childhood with the business acumen of someone far beyond her years. Alina explained the problem she had identified, the solution she had created, and the market opportunity she believed existed for healthy candy options. "Traditional lollipops feed the bacteria that cause cavities," she said, using a flip chart she had created to illustrate her points. "But Zollipops use xylitol, which actually fights those bacteria. Kids get to enjoy candy, and parents don't have to worry about tooth decay." The buyers exchanged glances across the conference table. In a room full of adults in business suits, this 8-year-old in a party dress was delivering one of the most compelling product presentations they had heard all year. "What makes you think kids will like candy that's good for their teeth?" one buyer asked. "In my experience, healthy usually means it doesn't taste as good." Alina smiled and reached into her briefcase for a bag of Zollipops. "Why don't you try one and see?" The room full of serious adults suddenly looked like kids at a candy store as they unwrapped Zollipops and tentatively tried Alina's creation. The response was immediate and unanimous. These didn't taste like health food. They tasted like premium candy that happened to be incredibly good for dental health. "These are really good," the head buyer said with surprise in her voice. "And they're making my mouth feel cleaner," another added. Alina beamed with pride. This was the reaction she had been hoping for since that first day at the bank, when her father had explained why she couldn't have a regular lollipop. "So," the head buyer said, "how many Zollipops can you supply if we decide to carry them in our stores?" It was the question Alina had been preparing for, but still hoped she wouldn't have to answer. Her first production run had been 10,000 lollipops, enough to test the market, but nowhere near enough to supply a major grocery chain. "How many would you need?" Alina asked, buying time while her mind raced through possibilities. "We'd want to start with a test in 50 stores," the buyer replied. "That would probably mean about 5,000 lollipops per month to start, with the possibility of expanding if they sell well." Alina's heart pounded with excitement and terror. 5,000 lollipops per month was more than half of her entire first production run. But it also represented the opportunity she had been dreaming of since the beginning, the chance to help thousands of kids enjoy healthy candy. "I can do that," she said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. The Whole Foods launch exceeded everyone's expectations, including Alina's most optimistic projections. Within the first month, several stores had sold out completely and were requesting additional inventory. Customer feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with parents praising the concept and kids asking their parents to buy more. But success created new challenges that tested Alina's ability to grow her business while maintaining the quality and vision that had made Zollipops successful in the first place. Managing inventory, coordinating with manufacturers, handling customer service, and developing new flavors all required skills and time that pushed Alina's capabilities to their limits. She was still in elementary school, still had homework and chores and the normal responsibilities of childhood, but she was also running a business that was growing faster than anyone had anticipated. The workload might have overwhelmed most adults, but Alina approached it with the same systematic determination she had brought to every other aspect of her entrepreneurial journey. She created schedules that balanced school, business, and family time. She developed systems for tracking inventory and customer feedback. Most importantly, she learned to delegate responsibilities to the adults who were helping support her business while maintaining control over the vision and decisions that would shape Zollipops' future. The expansion beyond Whole Foods happened organically as other retailers heard about the 8-year-old who had created candy that dentists actually recommended. Walgreens, CVS, and eventually major grocery chains like Kroger began carrying Zollipops as customer demand grew beyond what any single retailer could satisfy. Each new retail partnership brought additional complexity, but also validation that Alina had created something genuinely valuable. She wasn't just selling candy. She was solving a problem that millions of parents and children faced every day. The media attention began when a local Michigan newspaper wrote a feature story about the young entrepreneur in their community. The article caught the attention of regional television stations, which led to appearances on national morning shows, which eventually resulted in being featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine as the youngest entrepreneur in the publication's history. But the moment that truly changed everything came when Alina received an invitation that seemed too incredible to be real. Former First Lady Michelle Obama wanted to meet her at the White House. The invitation came as part of Mrs. Obama's initiative to promote healthy eating and entrepreneurship among young people. Alina's story, a child who had identified a health problem and created an innovative business solution, perfectly embodied the kind of leadership and creativity the program wanted to celebrate. Walking into the White House as a 9-year-old entrepreneur was surreal beyond anything Alina had imagined when she first asked why candy had to be bad for teeth. She met with Mrs. Obama, shared her story with other young entrepreneurs, and participated in discussions about business, health, and the importance of thinking creatively about solutions to problems. "What advice would you give to other kids who have business ideas?" Mrs. Obama asked during their conversation. Alina's response reflected the wisdom she had gained from her journey. "Don't let anyone tell you you're too young or too small to make a difference. If you have a good idea and you're willing to work really hard, you can create something that helps people and makes the world better. The White House visit generated additional media attention that introduced Zollipops to millions of families across America. Sales exploded beyond anything Alina and her team had projected, requiring rapid scaling of manufacturing, distribution, and customer service capabilities. By the time Alina turned 10, Zollipops had become a nationally recognized brand sold in over 25,000 stores across the United States. The company had expanded beyond just lollipops to include Zolli Drops, hard candy, Zaffy Taffy, and Zolli Gummies, gummy candy, all using the same tooth-friendly xylitol formulation that had started everything. Annual revenue had reached $6 million, making Alina one of the youngest millionaires in American history. But more importantly to her, millions of children were now able to enjoy candy that actually improved their dental health instead of harming it. The business success created opportunities that extended far beyond candy sales. Alina became a sought-after speaker at entrepreneurship conferences, sharing her story with audiences of adult business leaders who were amazed by what she had accomplished before reaching double digits in age. She established a foundation focused on promoting entrepreneurship education in schools, believing that other children could create innovative solutions to problems if they were taught to think like entrepreneurs from an early age. The international expansion of Zollipops brought Alina's healthy candy concept to children in countries around the world, proving that the problem she had identified in a Michigan bank was universal, and that her solution could help families everywhere. But perhaps the most meaningful aspect of Alina's success was the letters and emails she received from parents whose children had been able to enjoy candy for the first time without worrying about dental consequences. Children with diabetes could safely eat Zollipops. Kids prone to cavities could have treats without parental guilt. Families dealing with special dietary needs had found a candy option that worked for everyone. Today, as Alina approaches her 20th birthday, Zolli Candy has become a multi-million-dollar empire that continues growing and innovating. She's studying business at Michigan State University, while still serving as CEO of the company she created as a 7-year-old, with a simple question and an unwillingness to accept that good things had to be bad for you. The trajectory from denied lollipop to candy empire demonstrates something profound about the power of childhood curiosity combined with persistent determination. While adults often accept limitations and compromises, children still believe that problems exist to be solved and that better solutions are always possible. The best business ideas often come from the simplest questions, Alina reflects when speaking to aspiring entrepreneurs. I asked why candy had to be bad for teeth, and that question led to everything else. Most adults had accepted that candy and dental health were opposites. I was too young to accept that limitation. Her story proves that age isn't just irrelevant to entrepreneurial success. It can actually be an advantage. While adults often know too much about why things supposedly can't be done, children approach problems with fresh perspectives and unlimited belief in what might be possible. The 7-year-old who said no to a lollipop because it was bad for her teeth created a solution that has helped millions of children say yes to candy that actually makes their teeth healthier. She proved that the most transformative innovations often come from the most innocent questions, asked by people too young to know that what they're proposing is supposed to be impossible. From a single question in a bank lobby to a multi-million-dollar international business empire, Alina's journey demonstrates that entrepreneurship isn't about age, experience, or credentials. It's about identifying problems, creating solutions, and having the persistence to turn innovative ideas into reality. The next time a child asks, "Why does it have to be this way?" instead of dismissing the question, remember Alina Morse. Sometimes the most powerful business empires begin with the simplest questions, asked by people brave enough to believe that better answers are always possible.